evidence you relied on?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Oh, like the experts in the field, like people like academic institutions, like universities, people who studied it for like decades.
Yeah, I'm talking about the evidence now. What kind of evidence has led you to the conclusion it can be discounted?
Sorry, what's that again? I'm not following.
The religions,
Yeah.
the experts.
Right.
What kind of evidence have you considered which has led you to the conclusion that such evidence ought to be discounted?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence that I think is valid.
Wait a minute. You haven't seen any evidence, or have you considered the evidence to conclude that it isn't evidence?
Evidence that what they would quote off as evidence, I don't consider evidence. So it's like a
Now, what
mismatch.
yardstick have you used for that?
Well, it's just like how it's the same yardstick that I would measure any other way. It's like how I see evidence. It's something that's like measurable and observable.
But how do you perceive that? For example, if I were to say to you, okay, the evidence is the tree, as I said, yeah? Now, it's naturalistic evidence. It is evidence based on our understanding currently. So on what basis now are you going to discount that as evidence?
So when you say it's evidence of there being a tree, but it doesn't give any indication of how the tree got there. So it's not really any evidence for creation or evolution.
But here is the point though. What are you using as a criteria to discount it as evidence?
Well, well, by what metric is it evidence?
There you are. I've already said, look, we set a standard. I said, if I ask the question, what is evidence for God? I said the tree.
Yeah.
Now, if you are going to disagree, obviously you have a yardstick by which you are measuring it.
So I don't think,
what would it be?
I don't think the existence of something gives any indication of how that thing came into existence.
And for us to answer that question, we would have to consider the evidence.
I don't accept that as evidence.
No. But would you have to consider the evidence?
But there isn't any evidence there.
No. The issue about whether it's evidence or not has to be considered yet. But the first question we have to answer is, do we need to consider the evidence?
Yeah. So we
Excellent. But for us to consider whether the evidence is valid or not, we need to develop a criteria.
Yeah.
What is that criteria?
Something that logically follows, and you can see that you observe it and you can measure it. It's repeatable.
Logically follows.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it logical for something to come out of nothing?
Okay, I'll say no. I'll bite the bill on that.
No. Okay. Now, if we look at life,
Yeah.
the way we understand it,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm sure you are aware that a definition of life goes over 100 definitions. Yeah? There is no set definition. So we don't really know what we are talking about when we talk about life.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Understandable.
What's your definition? Whatever.
Well, like I said, there are over 100 definitions. Yeah? The question is, if something cannot come out of nothing,
Yeah.
the evidence is all showing that that's what happened. Do you agree?
No. What evidence? The fact that there's a tree.
No. The fact that the whole of the universe
Yeah.
and everything contained in it
Yeah.
began from nothing.
Okay.
But we just agreed that it's not logical to think like that.
Okay.
So what is the evidence now we should see?
So what's the counter evidence?
There's no counter because we haven't even established what the evidence is.
Yeah.
So what would the evidence be?
But also we don't know, like, the Big Bang's just a theory, and we can't prove it because we can't get evidence that is like observable.
Right, 1 second. There is a difference here. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It might not be observable, but can we perhaps consider circumstantially and formulate a conclusion? So if we look, for example, 1929, when Hubble looked out and established that there was an expansion, then we have subsequently all the scientists, including Einstein, who formulated, came to the conclusion that the universe must have had a beginning. But at that time, they were accepting the idea of a steady state universe, one that always existed. And Einstein actually had to decide on whether to include this because at that time, that is how they were. That is how they thought. So he was looking at his formulas and potentially wanting to change them to suit what was known, but the evidence he had clearly was contradicting what was known. So you see, the question that arises now, what evidence shall we consider first? But before we do that, what is the yardstick we would use to ensure that the evidence we are considering is appropriate?
I've told you how I define evidence already. It's got to be observable and repeatable.
But you know and I know 90% of the stuff we accept today is not observable. So for example, subatomic particles. We can't observe them.
We can though, we can do experiments.
No. That's the difference. Not observed directly, but we can test certain things and you can see the impact.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, but then that's not...
It doesn't have to be directly observable.
But there you are. Now we are coming to a yardstick. You see why it's so important.
Go on.
You are agreeing with me that there are many things now, customarily, which we think we have seen, but we don't really see. Yeah? So subatomic particles, we can see the effects of a test. Not a problem. But we can't observe them directly.
Yeah, but observation doesn't mean like direct observation visually. It means like we know like the impact and like we can tell, we can measure what changes.
Absolutely, excellent. Because the word observation means?
To measure some sort of impact or something.
Is that what the word observation naturally means?
I don't know, it depends on what definition you
Excellent. There you are. You are agreeing with me. First definitions, then yardsticks, then the evidence, then the interpretation of the evidence.
Okay.
Now my view, respectfully, is that if you are going to consider any evidence, it has to be naturalistic.
When you say naturalistic, what do you mean?
Everything that we can conceive of.
Okay, I don't.
Do we agree with that?
I don't, that's not a very well-defined term.
Well, okay, let me ask you. When I say everything we can conceive of, every aspect of human study is potentially evidence for a position.
So anything that you can think of is evidence?
Is it not?
No.
Why?
That's just like theory, isn't it?
No, but there you are. You see, number one, you are going to think about something. Number two, you are going to have a proposition. Yeah? That proposition may lead to a theory ultimately. Okay?
Yeah,
but that will require evidence, won't it?
No, you don't need evidence to generate a hypothesis.
I didn't say that. If you listen carefully, I said you will start with something, then ultimately you will lead to a theory. But that is going to require evidence.
You need evidence to get the theory.
No, you are going to need evidence to formulate a theory.
No, you need evidence to help prove the theory or test the hypothesis.
Excellent. Either way,
But not to formulate it.
Either way, you need evidence, don't you?
Only to test the hypothesis, not to formulate it.
Okay, let's do it that way. If it is to test the hypothesis, what are you going to seek?
What do you mean?
To test the hypothesis?
Well, that's where we get our evidence.
Sorry?
We need our evidence to test our hypothesis.
1 second. Now, this is the point I'm making. You see, even at the start, when I'm thinking about something, I have considered other evidence to start thinking the way I'm thinking.
Okay.
Are you following?
Yeah, I follow.
So in every aspect, I know what you are saying, on a purely, how can you say, on a pure basis of how to arrive at a conclusion or a theory, you are going to start off with a hypothesis, you will consider all the evidence, and then come up with a theory, and then the theory will be tested. Is that what you are saying?
No. You come up with a hypothesis.
Go on.
And then to test the hypothesis, we generate evidence, and then we can either accept or reject that hypothesis.
Before you arrive at a theory.
A theory is just another word for like a
Excellent, excellent. Just novel words. But we want to deal with the evidence. And evidence has to be real. Do we agree?